All right, let's get right into it. Today, we are talking about one of the most important, but maybe one of the most overlooked materials in all of human history, reinforced concrete. It's the unsung hero of our modern world, and we're going to see why. And I mean, seriously, just look around you. The skyscraper you see from your window, that bridge you drive over every day, even the sidewalk right under your feet. It's everywhere. It is, quite literally, the foundation of our entire society. But we almost never give it a second thought. So, what's the secret sauce? How does this simple mix of cement, water, and rock become strong enough to hold up these massive structures against, well, everything? That's the big question we're going to unpack right now. Okay, so here's the fundamental puzzle. On its own, concrete is an absolute beast when you try to squeeze it. That's called compression. But if you try to pull it apart under what's called tension, it cracks pretty easily. Now, steel, it's the complete opposite. It's fantastic at resisting being stretched, but it can buckle if you squeeze it too hard. They're like two superheroes with opposite powers. And this is where the magic happens. Engineers figured out that if you embed steel bars, what we call rebar, inside the concrete, you get this perfect partnership. The steel handles all the pulling forces, and the concrete takes care of the squeezing forces. Together, they create reinforced cement concrete, or RCC, a team-up that's way stronger than either one could be on its own. So we've got this amazing material, but how do we actually use it to build things that are not just strong today, but are going to be safe and reliable for decades? Well, that's where a really smart design philosophy comes into play. It's called the limit state method, and you can think of it less like a strict rule book and more like a safety-first mindset. It's all about making sure a structure can handle both the absolute worst-case scenario and the normal day-to-day grind without any problems. And this method is really broken down into two crucial checks. The first one is the ultimate limit state. This is the big one. This asks, if the worst storm hits, or the biggest earthquake, or the most extreme load you can imagine, is this building going to stay standing? It's all about preventing a collapse. Then you've got the serviceability limit state. This is more about everyday performance. Will the floors sag? Will ugly cracks appear? Is it a comfortable and durable place for people to actually use? So let's dive into that serviceability part for a second. The two big things engineers worry about are deflection and cracking. Deflection is really just a fancy word for sagging. If a floor beam sags too much, it can crack the tiles on top of it or even make doors and windows stick. And while tiny hairline cracks in concrete are actually normal, we have to control their size. If they get too wide, water can seep in, rust the steel inside, and that would be a huge problem for the whole structure. So how do you actually prevent that sagging? Well, here's a really cool and practical rule of thumb from the design codes. It's a simple ratio of a beam's length, its span, to its depth. So for a typical beam that's just supported on two ends, its length shouldn't be more than 20 times its depth. But look at a cantilever, a beam that's only supported on one end, like a balcony. That ratio is a much stricter 7 because it's more prone to sagging. These simple checks make sure beams aren't too skinny for their length. Okay, so we've covered the big picture philosophy. Now let's zoom all the way in. Let's get inside a single concrete beam and see how this all really works. You see, it's not just simple bending that a beam has to worry about. There's this other force called shear. You can picture it as a force trying to slice right through the beam on an angle. So how does our concrete and steel dream team handle this threat? Well, the concrete on its own can handle a little bit of this shear force, but under a really heavy load, it's just not enough. And that's where these things called steel stirrups come in. They are basically loops of rebar that are placed vertically all along the beam, and they act almost like stitches, literally holding the concrete together and stopping those dangerous diagonal cracks from ever forming. Now, for any of this to work, for the steel and concrete to act as a team, they have to have an absolutely unbreakable bond. And that's where this concept of development length comes in. It's basically the minimum length a rebar needs to be embedded into the concrete to get a proper grip. If you don't have enough grip, the bar would just slip out when a heavy load is applied, and the whole system would fail. It's absolutely critical. So we know that standard reinforced concrete is incredible, but engineers are, they're always pushing for what's next, which brings us to the next evolution of concrete technology. How do you take this amazing material and make it even better? How do you build even longer bridges or thinner floors or just more incredible structures? Well, the answer lies in a technique that kind of flips the whole idea on its head. Welcome to the world of pre-stressed concrete. The idea here is absolutely ingenious. Before you ever put a load on the beam, you run these super high-strength steel cables, or tendons, through it, and you pull them incredibly tight. By doing that, you're actively squeezing, or pre-compressing, the concrete. It's like you're giving the concrete a built-in superpower to fight against tension before the battle even starts. And this slide just makes it crystal clear. Regular RCC is passive. The steel only jumps into action after a load is applied and the concrete starts to stretch. But pre-stressed concrete, it's proactive. That built-in compression is working from day one, actively fighting against the pulling forces. This means you can pretty much prevent cracks from ever forming, which leads to way more efficient and durable structures. But of course, it's not quite that simple. Nothing in engineering ever is, right? Over many, many years, that initial squeezing force can actually fade a little bit. We call it loss of pre-stress. It happens for a few reasons. The concrete can slowly shrink or creep over time, and the steel tendons can gradually relax. So engineers have to be smart and calculate these long-term effects and basically build in extra strength from the very beginning to account for it. So there you have it. From that basic, powerful partnership of steel and concrete to the proactive genius of pre-stressing, this material has quite literally shaped the world we live in. It's what built the 20th century, which really makes you wonder, what will we build with whatever comes next? Thanks for tuning in.